Hey everybody, Sam Grismali here. I'm here to talk about politics from a professional's perspective, and I have some news to discuss. I've been reading a lot and engaging myself on on the Kavanaugh Supreme Court nomination, and I noticed something which I think is important for all of us to take note of, and so I'm just going to bring up right now the content that I want to discuss. All right, so you can see here that the hearings on that's posted on the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh for an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. It starts on Tuesday, September 4th at 9:30 a.m. in Hart Senate Office Building. And it starts on Tuesday, but it's going to run all weekend. In fact, the big day is probably on Wednesday. That's when all the questioning happens. And that's the day that we could expect the most news to happen out of this hearing. But check this out. Hearings in the Senate Intelligence Committee. Open hearing, foreign influence operations, use of social media platforms. Not a lot of information here yet, but this is also Wednesday, September 5th at 9:30 a.m. So I can't say for sure whether they did this on purpose, but I will say if they did, it's smart. And let me tell you why. And they being the Republicans, by the way. So the Republicans, their top priority right now, forget Donald Trump. Of course, he wants to see his Supreme Court nominee confirmed. But Trump and the Republicans don't really get along that well, and the top thing that the Republicans actually care about is confirming the Supreme Court nominee, because it'll give them control over the nation's judiciary for the next 20 to 30 years probably. So it's a really, really big deal, and the most important thing for them, if they want a smooth confirmation, is to have as little attention as possible on the confirmation. And thus far, they've done a pretty good job. They had all these distractions that came up. I'm sure I don't need to list them over the last couple months since the nomination was announced, that have kept national focus off of this nomination in the same way that the Republicans had hoped to avoid with their Obamacare repeal and failed. And the public did get involved. This time, the public has not really been that involved, even though this Supreme Court nomination is probably a bigger deal than the Obamacare repeal, because, not that the Obamacare repeal wasn't a big deal, but it's a bigger deal because if he wins, or if he gets confirmed, he probably will destroy Obamacare, in addition to a lot of other stuff. So, make no mistake, this is a much, much bigger deal than any fight we've had in terms of the lasting impact on the country's laws. So they've tried to keep focus off of the nomination for a while, and they've succeeded largely. But this week is the hearing, so they've got to do some gymnastics to try to keep this as low key as possible. And I think that the timing of this Intelligence Committee hearing on the foreign influence on social media operations, foreign influence operations on social media platforms. That is a huge, huge piece of catnip for the press, because number one, a lot of them are really still obsessed with the idea that Russia hacked our elections, and number two, Republicans have been ginning up a lot of hate against the social media platforms themselves for the last couple months as well. They've been saying that the platforms discriminate against conservatives, which I'm not going to discuss the idea on its merits. I mean, it's not really, this really isn't the forum to do that, though there are lots of people who are discussing that online, so I'm sure you could find it. But regardless of the merits, it's super important to realize that the narrative that the social media platforms are being biased against conservatives is a really important narrative for the Republicans for the election, because it sort of furthers their case that the elites are against them, even though they're the ones in power. and they are the elite. And it also is super, super important for them to legitimize a lot of the gains they've made on social media over the last, I don't know, couple years. The number of people who have built up new social media operations but are deemed illegitimate by the institutions that undergird American public discourse, which at this point includes the social media companies, has decided that these are not legitimate actors, not legitimate voices, and they have to make it seem like that's a conspiracy with nefarious reasons, as opposed to, about Nazis. So whatever your opinion on this, it's important to realize that this is a really essential narrative for the Republicans. So they get a twofer here. Actually, it's a threefer. They get to distract people from the Kavanaugh hearing, which is their real important goal here. They get to attract the press to talk about foreign influence, which really is going to be about China. They're gonna make sure that nobody talks about Russia, or the Democrats will try to talk about Russia, but they're going to try to keep the focus off of Russia and put it on China. And then they're also going to be able to use this as a blockbuster forum to go after the tech giants, and that's going to be super, super important for them. So they get three big gains out of this scheduling, and I think it's really interesting that that they were smart enough to do this. I assume it's not luck, and I have never really seen the Democrats do something similar. So something to keep in mind. We can always learn from our enemies, and just remember how this works. When you have the ability to deal with how the structure of the national conversation with scheduling. When you have the ability to do that, that's a huge power, and it's not something that you should ignore. So I guess this is advice for aspiring communications professionals and established communications professionals who all want, like me, who may want to better their craft. Okay, that's all I have to say. I'd love to hear any comments that you have, if you have them. I'm really enjoying recording these videos so far, and I think I'm going to continue. So please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks a lot.